Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a book review on The Murder of Mr. Wickham by Claudia Gray. In The Murder of Mr. Wickham by Claudia Gray, Mr. and Mrs. Knightley are hosting a month-long house party, bringing together many beloved characters from the world of Jane Austen. Definitely not invited is Mr. Wickham, and because of his latest financial scheme, he has made an enemy of most everyone at the party. Everyone gladly wishes him dead, but it still is a shock when Mr. Wickham turns up dead. A killer is amongst the house guests. Juliet Tilney, daughter of Catherine and Henry, and Jonathan Darcy, son of Elizabeth and Darcy, are an unlikely team as they unite to discover the killer. This book was so quaint and charming, you guys. I really had a fun time with this book. Quaint and charming is really just the big two words that I can think about. It's just so very British, obviously. Obviously, I think what really captures a potential reader for this book is definitely the whole idea of the world of Jane Austen, all of your favorite beloved characters, all uniting and coming together in this book. It's very comparable, though it may sound silly, it's very comparable to like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but instead of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's the Jane Austen book universe. And seriously, guys, oh my god. If the BBC doesn't like do some sort of TV miniseries out of this book, I mean, something's wrong with them. This has all of the trappings of a great BBC period drama. Seriously. I need it. So yeah, I really had a fun time with this book, and I could tell Claudia Gray herself had an incredible amount of fun with this book. I think she had a fun time kind of figuring out, okay, what would our favorite Jane Austen characters be doing, you know, a couple years after the fact of the events that happened in their own books, you know? Would they have children? Would their marriages be good or bad, you know? What are some issues that they're facing, especially like financial issues, marital issues, you know, all that good stuff. You could definitely tell she had just a great time putting this narrative together and kind of getting all of our favorite characters to interact with each other in just interesting, wonderful ways. It's like I would have never imagined, you know, all of the great Jane Austen heroines being in like one room together. You know, it's just so perfect and ideal. Now, I do need to have a quick disclaimer here. I have not read all of Jane Austen. I have been trying to, but it's been slow going. The only Jane Austen books I have read are Pride and Prejudice, obviously, and Sense and Sensibility, and Persuasion, and Northanger Abbey. What's the other one? Is Mansfield Park, right? I have never read Mansfield Park, so yeah, anything going on with those particular characters, I was like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know what their backstory is, you know? So, and yeah, that's it, isn't it? Oh, and Emma. I have not read Emma either. I can't believe that. Seriously, I have never read Emma. What is wrong with me? I have seen a couple different adaptations of Emma, and I like the story of Emma. Why have I not read the book? Oh my god, I need to remedy that. So yeah, I have not read every bit of Jane Austen. I'm very familiar specifically with Pride and Prejudice and Sensibility, because those are kind of my two favorites. So I can't really comment totally on that to some extent. You know, I'm kind of just, I'm giving my feelings on what Claudia Gray has done, you know. But that being said, I do think Claudia Gray, I think she did a great job of kind of being like, hey, this is where these characters would possibly be in the future, you know, what their lives would be like, some of the dramas and issues they're facing. That all, I think, felt genuinely believable. Yeah, you know, you have characters like Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth who are now older. They have teenage children, you know, what would they be like? And yeah, like they felt believable. I don't think anybody ever felt like totally out of character. I saw other reviewers on Goodreads saying that they didn't like this book and they felt like a lot of the characters that were doing things that wouldn't be what their characters would normally be doing. I never really felt that way from the few books that I have read by Jane Austen, you know. I felt like the lives of these characters and their behaviors and mannerisms, they felt believable to me, at least. And yeah, I mean, this is also still to some extent a historical period piece, you know. I think Claudia Gray did a good job of you know, giving that atmosphere of the Regency era. And yeah, this is supposed to be like post, kind of like the Napoleonic Wars, if I'm remembering correctly. It's supposed to be like post-Napoleonic Wars, so there's kind of that backdrop as well, which I like to be in here, because yeah, in the original Jane Austen books, I mean, there's never really any mention of like kind of all that going on. You know, it's like I think you kind of know it's all going on, but yeah, it's never mentioned or gone into, because the point of those stories, it's relationships with the characters and, you know, building up the main romance and whatnot. It's not about like any historical context going on. So I liked kind of a lot more of the historical context going on in this book and where these characters are at with that. And there's something about this book that it felt like it could be reminiscent of a traditional Jane Austen book, if that makes sense. I feel like if Jane Austen was alive now in our modern era, I feel like this could possibly be the type of book she would write, if that makes sense. Claudia Gray, it's like, I don't think she was trying to be Jane Austen, you know, but I think she was trying to evoke kind of that spirit of Jane Austen, and, you know, kind of that fun and humor and lightness, and you know, I definitely could feel that in this story. You know, kind of the etiquette of the time period, the etiquette and the mannerisms of the time period. Claudia Gray, she was definitely kind of poking fun at the Regency era, you know, keeping it, you know, traditional to the Regency era, but kind of having those moments like, oh, this is so stupid and silly. Why do we have this type of etiquette? Why do we have these mannerisms, you know? Sometimes the characters would almost be a little meta to some extent, you know, them commentating on, why do we do this? It's so outdated. Why do we do this? So I did. I liked what Claudia Gray in general was doing with this book and with the characters and how she was depicting the Regency era, you know, trying to keep as much of what it should be like, but also having those little moments of levity, kind of poking fun at it that didn't feel too out of place. So just quickly getting into some of my more negative feelings about this book, because I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, but and I was really hoping I could give the book 4 stars, because it was going very well initially, but then it kind of started going a little downhill for me, why I ended up just giving it 3 stars. What I loved initially about this book was definitely the whole big setup. Because Claudia Gray, she has to write this book knowing that perhaps not everyone has read all of Jane Austen. Maybe people have had absolutely no experience with Jane Austen, or maybe their only experience has been through maybe like the movie and TV adaptations of Jane Austen, you know? So Claudia Gray, I really liked her initial setup here. We're reintroduced to all of our main couples, essentially, where they're at currently in their lives. Yeah, who their children are, if they have any. Because yeah, we have Catherine and Henry Tilney, their daughter Juliet, and then Elizabeth and Darcy's son Jonathan. So yeah, because Juliet and Jonathan are kind of our 2 big main characters in this story. So I liked all that setup, so that way we know exactly who these characters are, what their relationships are, you know, establishing the world, especially for those who are maybe not familiar with Jane Austen at all. So I liked all that, and then I definitely liked once everyone got to the nightly house party, and then of course here comes Mr. Wickham. Yeah, guys, don't we all just love to hate Mr. Wickham? He comes in, and everybody has some sort of connection to Mr. Wickham, and because he has some sort of financial scheme going on, and it's not going well for our protagonist. You know what this big thing is that Wickham has set up. So I liked that setup. How Mr. Wickham kind of comes into the story, establishing that everybody hates this guy, because then, yeah, because this is called The Murder of Mr. Wickham, he's going to wind up dead. This is a spoiler right here on the cover. So Mr. Wickham, he does wind up dead at some point. I like that Claudia Gray did take that time to build up the story, because at first I was thinking, oh, Mr. Wickham's going to be dead within the first chapter, you know, but yeah, Mr. Wickham makes it through several chapters before he is offed, which I liked, because it helps establish once again his relationship with characters, you know, past and present and whatnot, and yeah, kind of give people motivation, like, oh, could they be the killer? So I liked all of the initial build-up, and then the introduction of Wickham, and all the mayhem and mischief that he's up to. And then, yeah, I liked the events right after his murder, where there's kind of just sheer chaos and panic, and everyone's like, oh dear God, what has happened? We all hated this guy, but didn't mean we wanted him dead, you know? So I liked a lot of that, and the initial kind of investigating that happened right after that, within those next couple chapters and whatnot. Now, the book where it started kind of falling apart for me. I mean, it's not a very long book, but for some reason it felt long. Sometimes the narrative felt a little bogged down by some unnecessary things going on. Just the investigation itself into Wickham's death. It's like, that should be what is the most interesting and fascinating, but sometimes it got a little slow and boring, sometimes even weirdly enough kind of monotonous and repetitive, strangely enough. So I just feel like the murder investigation, like, it should have been solved much quicker than what it was, and it kind of felt like Claudia Gray was just trying to throw in some fluff just for the hell of it, to kind of plump out the narrative and to have more pages, when I don't think that was absolutely necessary. Because I think this book could have maybe come in right under 300 rather than kind of going over 300 pages. So yeah, that was kind of my big issue with the book. Definitely just the book being a little too lengthy. And then my other big issue with this book, once again, though I did still really like it and enjoy it, once we do get to the reveal at the end of this book, it was not shocking or surprising. I was really expecting Claudia Gray to do something that I would be like, oh, say what? Oh my God. You know, I wanted to have that OMG moment near the end of this book. And instead I was like, oh, okay, I kind of figured that out like at the halfway point of this book, you know? So that's kind of the unfortunate thing. I think the reader is able to jump multiple steps ahead of Jonathan and Juliet as they're, you know, investigating the murder of Mr. Wickham and whatnot. I think it kind of reaches a point, you, the reader, kind of have your suspicions of who the murderer is. Like, you'll kind of have your couple of people that you've boiled it down to, you know, and the people that you have ruled out. So then, yeah, once you do get to that reveal, it's kind of like, well, I'm not really too shocked about it. And I think what's also kind of a little frustrating about this book, because Claudia Gray is trying in her way to mimic a classic Jane Austen book, and you know, how do Jane Austen books typically go? Jane Austen books, what people love about her books is how reliable her books are, and that's why they're so rereadable, because her narratives are so reliable, her characters are so reliable, and you know exactly what to expect with her books. You know that even when there's drama and pain and angst going on with the characters, you know there's going to be a happy ending. So that's kind of very similar to what's going on in this book, since she is very much kind of mimicking a classic Jane Austen book. You kind of, from what you know with just how the nature of Jane Austen's plots run, you kind of know where this book is going. So that kind of spoils it too, to some extent, that you know nothing really overly dramatic or upsetting or emotional is going to happen, because it most likely there's going to be a good outcome, you know. Hopefully that's not too much of a spoiler for me to say. I'm not sure if that's too much of a spoiler, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I felt about this book. I think it was maybe a little too long. I think the murder could have been solved a little bit quicker. And yeah, I think an ending that's kind of predictable and not very shocking. But yeah, like I said, all of that being said, I did still really highly enjoy this book. I liked seeing all of the Jane Austen characters come together in wonderfully interesting ways, and all their interactions with one another. And then, yeah, as far as like your new characters, like I said, you have Juliet Tilney and Jonathan Darcy. I loved them. I found them believable as children, you know, of these Jane Austen characters. I really liked their personalities and their characters and the relationship with one another, because you're definitely like, oh, I definitely want them to get together, you know. And I'm curious if Claudia Gray is intending on doing another book, like if this is going to possibly be a potential series. I wouldn't mind that, you know, like Jonathan and Juliet teaming up and investigating something, you know, and yeah, continuing to bring all of our Jane Austen characters together. I can see this being spun out into like a couple more books, because even though the main story of this is solved by the ends, there's definitely no cliffhanger there. The relationship with Juliet and Jonathan definitely kind of ends in this hopefully this ain't a spoiler once again, their relationship kind of ends in a bit of a cliffhanger. That kind of left me wanting more, and that's kind of what made me think, oh, can we possibly get a book 2, you know, and get more of their relationship and whatnot. So I guess I would definitely recommend this book. If you are a fan of all things Jane Austen, definitely give this a chance. I mean, yeah, judging from Goodreads reviews, people either loved this or hated it. It just kind of depends on what type of Jane Austen reader you are. Kind of judging from the comments, a lot of people who were like Jane Austen purists, they just hated this. They really hated this. It's like they don't want the original books touched in any fashion. They don't want any continuations, you know. So yeah, if you're like a purist, this may not be your cup of tea at all, unfortunately. But yeah, if you're willing to kind of just broaden out this universe, expand this universe, and kind of see the lives of these characters after the fact, I think you might have a good time with it, you know? And there's also something about this book, if you guys have read something like Death Comes to Pemberley by P.D. James, or if you have at least seen the miniseries adaptation Death Comes to Pemberley, which, by the way, I recommend Death Comes to Pemberley, the miniseries, over the book version. I think this is a case of an adaptation actually being way better than the book, to be quite honest. But yeah, if you like something like Death Comes to Pemberley, whether that's, you know, the miniseries or the book, this is something very reminiscent to that. And yeah, once again, something involving Mr. Wickham. It's like everybody loves just kind of throwing stuff at Mr. Wickham because we all love to hate him once again. We like to see him get up to trouble and be punished. So yeah, I definitely recommend this if you like something like Death Comes to Pemberley, or yeah, if there are other books within the Jane Austen kind of universe expansion or whatever that are similar, you know. So yeah, it was definitely a fun, enjoyable time, despite some of my issues with it. But yeah, if Claudia Gray does decide to write another book, I will definitely pick it up. So you guys, that is it for my thoughts and feelings on The Murder of Mr. Wickham. Don't we just love the sound of that? So in the comments below, have you guys read The Murder of Mr. Wickham? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Or do you plan on picking it up sometime in the future? Just let me know. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.